What if God is not ignoring you? What if the silence that frightens you is not His absence, but the beginning of a deeper work inside your soul? You have prayed, waited, and repeated the same request so many times that you no longer know what else to say. At first, you prayed with confidence. Then you prayed with tears. Now perhaps you can barely speak. When God seems silent, the mind begins creating painful explanations. Maybe I'm being punished. Maybe my faith is too weak. Maybe God listens to everyone except me. Maybe I have disappointed Him too many times. These thoughts rarely arrive all at once. They enter quietly, especially at night, when the world becomes still, and there is nothing left to distract you from what hurts. Saint Teresa of Avila understood this struggle more deeply than many people realize. Today, she is remembered as a great mystic, a reformer, and one of the Church's most important spiritual teachers. Because of that, people often imagine that prayer was always easy for her. They pictured Teresa surrounded by peace, feeling God's presence every time she closed her eyes. But her real spiritual journey was far more human. Teresa struggled with distraction, inconsistency, fear, and discouragement. She wanted to give herself completely to God, yet part of her remained attached to comfort, approval, conversations, and the opinions of others. There were times when prayer did not feel peaceful or beautiful. It felt difficult, dry, and exhausting. She would begin to pray, only to find her thoughts moving in every direction. Her body was present, but her mind was somewhere else. She wanted to speak with God, yet sometimes it seemed as though her words were disappearing into an empty room. Teresa knew what it meant to remain before God without receiving the comfort she desperately wanted. Perhaps you know that feeling too. You begin the rosary, but before finishing the next mystery, you are thinking about money, your children, your marriage, your health, or a mistake you made years ago. You open the Bible, but your mind is too tired to understand what you are reading. Then guilt appears, and you begin judging yourself for not praying better. You may think that a faithful Catholic should feel peaceful during prayer. You may imagine that the saints were always focused, confident, and spiritually strong. But holiness does not begin when every distraction disappears. Holiness begins when you keep returning to God each time your mind wanders. Every return is a new decision to remain with Him. Every time you lose focus and gently bring your attention back, you are choosing God again. Every time you pray without feeling comfort, you are offering something deeper than emotion. You are offering faithfulness. It is easy to stay when prayer feels beautiful. It takes a more mature love to stay when heaven appears silent. Teresa gradually discovered that one of the greatest mistakes in the spiritual life is believing that God is present only when we can feel Him. Feelings can be powerful, but they are not always reliable. One day, prayer may fill you with peace. The next day, the same prayer may leave you feeling completely empty. God does not become closer because you feel emotional, and He does not move farther away because you feel nothing. His presence is not controlled by the condition of your emotions. The silence you experience does not automatically mean that He has abandoned you. Sometimes the deepest work of grace happens in places your feelings cannot reach. There is a kind of love that says, "I will remain while this feels good." But there is a deeper love that says, "I will remain even when I receive nothing in return." Teresa learned that prayer was not only a place of consolation, it was also a place of surrender, where the soul slowly learns to seek God for who He is, not only for what He gives. Perhaps this is where you are today. You still attend Mass, but you feel distant. You continue praying for your family, but the situation seems to be getting worse. You asked God to restore a relationship, yet that person walked farther away. You begged Him for clarity, but your life became even more confusing. You asked for healing, but the pain remained. You prayed for a door to open, and instead, another door closed. You tried to trust, but each delay made your heart more tired. Somewhere inside you, a question began to grow. Why would God remain silent at the exact moment when I need Him most? Before we continue, tell us in the comments what city and country you are listening from. Your words may seem simple, but someone reading them could realize that they are not alone in their struggle. There are believers in different cities and nations carrying the same hidden questions, kneeling in the same silence, and trying not to lose hope. Spiritual silence can make you feel isolated. It convinces you that everyone else has a strong faith while you are the only person struggling. You see others speaking confidently about God, and you wonder why your own heart feels so tired. But many saints passed through seasons of darkness, confusion, and spiritual dryness before understanding what God was doing within them. Saint Teresa described the soul as an interior castle containing many rooms. At the center of that castle, God dwells more intimately than we normally understand. Yet many people spend their entire lives near the entrance. They remain surrounded by noise, fear, comparison, memories, plans, resentment, and anxiety. Prayer is the doorway into that interior castle. But walking through the door does not mean that every room will immediately be filled with light. Sometimes the first things we encounter are the parts of ourselves we have tried to avoid. Our impatience, our need for control, our fear of rejection, and our habit of measuring God's love by the condition of our lives. This is one reason silence can feel so painful. When consolation disappears, we begin to discover what our faith was resting upon. Were we seeking God, or only the feeling of being protected? Were we trusting Him, or expecting Him to follow the plan we had already written? Were we praying out of love, or because prayer made us feel in control? These questions are uncomfortable, but Teresa did not raise them to condemn wounded people. She understood that God can use silence to reveal what noise has kept hidden. When every comforting feeling disappears, the soul is invited to love more freely. It begins learning that faith is not the certainty that everything will happen as expected. Faith is the decision to remain with God even when you don't understand what He is allowing. It is not pretending that the pain does not exist. It is not forcing yourself to feel peaceful when your heart is breaking. Faith can be as simple as saying, "Lord, I do not understand you right now, but I refuse to walk away." A seed buried beneath the ground appears to be doing nothing. There is no visible movement, no proof, and no sign that life is forming. Yet in the darkness, the seed is breaking open. Roots begin growing before anyone sees the first leaf. What looks like inactivity from above may be transformation underneath. Your prayer may be like that seed. You see silence while God sees roots. You see delay while God sees preparation. You believe nothing is changing, while grace is quietly changing the way you love, trust, wait, and surrender. The answer may not yet be visible because something deeper is still being formed within you. But this leads to an even harder question. If God is truly working in silence, why does that silence sometimes become so painful that faithful people begin losing hope? Why does He allow the soul to reach a place where prayer feels almost impossible? Saint Teresa discovered an answer, but it was not the easy answer most people expect. She came to understand that prayer was never meant to be only a way of convincing God to change her circumstances. Prayer was the place where God was changing her. His silence was not always a closed door. Sometimes it was an invitation to enter more deeply, to release control, and to discover a presence that did not depend on feelings. The answer Teresa found can completely change the way you understand unanswered prayer. But before that answer becomes clear, you must recognize the hidden danger that often enters during spiritual silence. It is not distraction, sadness, or even doubt. It is the quiet temptation to believe that because you cannot feel God, you no longer need to remain with Him. That temptation is dangerous because it turns a season of silence into a final conclusion. You begin by saying, "I cannot feel God." Then, little by little, the thought changes into, "God is not here." After that, another thought arrives. Maybe He was never listening at all. Saint Teresa understood how easily the soul can confuse dryness with abandonment. She learned that prayer must not be judged only by what we feel during it. Sometimes the prayer that seems empty is the prayer that demands the greatest love, because there is no comfort, no emotional reward, and no visible answer keeping us there. Teresa did not describe prayer as a perfect performance. For her, prayer was a relationship, a meeting between friends. That means you do not have to arrive with beautiful words. You do not need to hide your confusion. You can come before God tired, distracted, disappointed, and even afraid. Real friendship does not disappear because one conversation is difficult. In the same way, your relationship with God is not destroyed because you struggle to pray. He is not shocked by your weakness. He already knows the thoughts you are afraid to say aloud, and He is not waiting for you to become perfect before approaching Him. Sometimes the most honest prayer is only one sentence: Lord, I am still here. There may be no tears, no peace, and no sudden sign from heaven. Yet those words can contain more faith than a long prayer spoken when everything is going well. The world teaches us to leave when something stops satisfying us. We abandon relationships, commitments, and habits when they no longer produce immediate results. That same mentality can enter the spiritual life. We begin to treat prayer like a transaction instead of a relationship. We think, I prayed, so God should answer. We think, I trusted Him, so nothing terrible should happen. We think, I have tried to live faithfully, so my life should make sense. When that does not happen, disappointment can quickly become resentment. But Teresa discovered that God is not a machine that responds to the correct spiritual formula. He is a father, and a father's wisdom is greater than a child's limited understanding. This does not make pain easy, but it changes the way we carry it. A child may believe that love means receiving everything immediately. A mature soul learns that love also includes waiting, correction, hidden protection, and answers that arrive in forms we did not expect. Sometimes God's silence is not the absence of an answer. Sometimes it is the refusal to give an answer before the soul is ready to receive it. There are things you asked for years ago that might have harmed you if they had been given immediately. There are doors you begged God to open that would have led you away from peace. There are people you desperately wanted to keep, but losing them exposed truths you were unwilling to see. At the time, it felt like abandonment. Later, you may have recognized protection, but there are also wounds that still make no sense. Not every painful silence becomes understandable in this life, and Christian faith does not require us to pretend otherwise. Teresa's answer was not that every tragedy has an explanation we can easily discover. Her answer was that the soul can know God even when it cannot understand His decisions. There is a difference between receiving an explanation and receiving the strength to remain. Many people are not truly asking God for information. They are asking for reassurance. They want to know that their suffering is not meaningless, that their prayers are not disappearing, and that their lives have not been forgotten. This is where Teresa's image of the interior castle becomes so powerful. She taught that God is not merely outside the soul, waiting at a great distance. He is present within at the deepest center, even when the outer rooms are filled with noise, fear, and confusion. You may feel far from God while He is closer than your own thoughts. Your emotions may be restless while His presence remains steady. You may be searching for Him in signs, circumstances, and immediate answers while He is quietly calling you inward. The silence may not mean that God has moved away. It may mean that He is teaching you to recognize Him without depending on constant signs. A faith that survives only through emotional consolation will always be fragile. But a faith rooted in trust can endure nights when nothing feels certain. This does not mean you should never ask for signs, healing, or help. Teresa prayed with confidence, and Christians are invited to bring every need before God, But prayer changes when we stop demanding that God prove His love through the outcome we prefer. Instead of saying, "Lord, show me that you love me by doing this," the soul begins to say, "Lord, help me trust your love even if the answer is different from what I hoped." That prayer is difficult because it releases control. Control often hides beneath religious language. We may say that we trust God while secretly believing He must follow our plan. Then, when life changes direction, we feel betrayed. Teresa's spiritual path exposed this illusion. Surrender is not giving up. It is not becoming passive or refusing to act. Surrender means doing what is right while accepting that the final result belongs to God. You can seek treatment, repair a relationship, look for work, protect your family, and still surrender the outcome. You can cry and still trust. You can ask questions and still believe. You can feel afraid and still remain faithful. Holiness is not the absence of human emotion. It is choosing not to let fear have the final word. Perhaps you are listening because one prayer has remained unanswered for a long time. Maybe you are praying for a child who has left the faith. Maybe you are asking for healing, peace in your marriage, freedom from anxiety, or direction about a decision. You may be exhausted from hearing people say, "Just trust God," as though trust were simple. Teresa's life shows that trust is not a feeling we wait to receive. It is a decision we often make while trembling. Trust may look like attending Mass when you feel spiritually empty. It may look like praying 1 decade of the Rosary because you cannot finish 5. It may look like opening the Bible even when one verse is all your tired mind can carry. God is not measuring your faith by the intensity of your emotions. A weak prayer offered honestly may be more precious than a confident prayer spoken without love. He sees the effort hidden from everyone else. He sees you trying to forgive while the wound still hurts. He sees you caring for your family while your own heart is tired. He sees the moments when you almost gave up but chose to remain for one more day. This is the answer Teresa found in the silence. God was not asking her to create a perfect spiritual experience. He was teaching her to remain in relationship with Him through every change of emotion. Silence became less frightening when she stopped treating it as proof of rejection. She began to understand that the deepest prayer is not always the prayer filled with visions, peace, or extraordinary experiences. Sometimes the deepest prayer is simply staying. Maybe today, staying is all you can offer. Then offer that. Do not underestimate the holiness of remaining. You do not have to solve your entire spiritual life tonight. You only have to take the next faithful step. Speak to God exactly as you are. Tell Him that you are angry, tired, confused, or afraid. Tell Him that His silence hurts. Honest prayer is not disrespect. A relationship cannot become deeper when the heart is constantly pretending. Then remain quiet for a moment without demanding a feeling. Let your presence before God become the prayer. You may not notice anything changing, but love is being formed every time you choose Him without immediate consolation. If this message is speaking to a hidden part of your life, press the like button. It helps this story reach another person who may be wondering whether God has forgotten them. Sometimes one video arrives at the exact moment someone is preparing to give up. Subscribe to Divine Echo for more true stories and spiritual lessons from the saints. Their lives remind us that doubt, dryness, and pain are not signs that faith has failed. Very often, they are the places where faith becomes real. And before you leave, write your city and country in the comments. Then, if you feel comfortable, write one word for the intention you are carrying: family, healing, marriage, faith, peace. Let the comments become a quiet map of people choosing hope together. God's silence may still be difficult tomorrow. Your situation may not change overnight, but you can enter prayer with a different question. Instead of asking only, "Why is God not answering me?" ask, "What kind of love is He teaching me in this waiting?" Saint Teresa discovered that God was not absent from the silence. He was hidden within it, drawing her beyond feelings, beyond control, and beyond the need to understand everything before trusting him. You may not hear the answer you expected, but perhaps beneath all the noise and fear, another answer is already being formed inside you. Not the promise that nothing painful will happen, but the certainty that you will not walk through it alone.